That's an interesting question. You don't hear this question from this perspective a lot.
Hmm.
So, Saint Alphonsus taught that a spouse who sins mortally who without just cause, i.e., serious illness, periods of penance, risk of danger, etc., refuses the marital debt when the other asks for it, simply quote not being in the mood without a proportionate reason doesn't count as this in tradition. Even as a man, this sounds extremely rigid. Am I really committing a mortal sin if I'm tired and don't want to be into it with my wife until later in the week?
Okay. Well, in order for a sin to be mortal, we've got to be clear about several things. One, it has to be grave matter. You need to have sufficient reflection on that, and you completely consent to it anyway. If any one of those things is lacking, then it is not a mortal sin. The culpability, the guilt of the sin is mitigated if you might even have a really grave issue going on, but maybe I didn't have full knowledge. Or maybe I had full knowledge that it was really wrong, but I didn't really consent to it. I was forced into it or whatever. So if any one of those things is not fully present, you don't have a mortal sin. And so I think it would be an excessive thing to say, if one spouse is interested and the other is not, then just universal blanket statement, mortal sin, going to hell for that. I don't think that that's really the spirit of the law of what the saint was talking about. I think what you may be, and I haven't read the primary source, and I'd need to really, analyze it closely, of just like if I'm knowingly withholding love from my spouse without a real sufficient reason to, there's a lack of love that's taking place there. I would not conceive that to be, a mortal sin of grave matter, full knowledge, complete consent, because there could be so many factors going on in that relationship that's really only known to the couple and God. And, rarely is it a matter of just pure basic selfishness. Like, nope, you don't get that. Usually there's a lot of other stuff going on. And so I think this is why the church does not say who's in hell. The church will tell you who's in heaven, based on canonizations and miracles and stuff like that. But whether it's Judas or Hitler or Stalin or Paul, you name it, the church will never say who's in hell. Now, well, why? Because we know what a mortal sin could be. Well, we know what grave sin could be, but only God knows if the person had full knowledge and complete consent. And so that's why the church will not even say Judas Iscariot is definitely in hell, because who knows? Maybe there was an act of contrition at the final moment where he entrusted himself to divine mercy. Only God knows those things. And so we should be careful and precise when we're talking about particular sins, that you can say black or white, grave matter, oftentimes. That can be oftentimes very clear. Whether it's a mortal sin, ultimately is known to God alone, because although we can know it's grave matter, God alone knows if we had full knowledge and complete consent.
Yeah, and when this is happening, you just have to look at intentions. Intentions are just huge, and I've talked about this several times, just in the moment and what is going on, no matter how good something looks in your actions or maybe how bad they look, God actually sees the heart and the intentions of the heart in that moment. So you just have to really take that hard look at yourself and why are you doing this and what is the intention behind it?
And I think it could even be a sin on the part of one spouse to say, if you don't give me this, you're going to hell.
Yeah, that's a little...
And to kind of spiritually manipulate a person into intimacy is very different than having an altruistic concern for the salvation of their soul. It's like, am I using this theological information to get pleasure from my wife, kind of just pushing some spiritual guilt on wife or husband, or do I really care about that person's soul? Because if you really care about that person's soul, you'd care about their heart, their emotions, their body, and that would involve a little bit of tenderness to perhaps understand why are they not interested in being close right now, because it could be a matter of just absolute exhaustion. Not that you're mad at the spouse or you want to just withhold intimacy as a form of get back at you manipulation. It could be like, I'm really burnt out and I'm just so tired and I would feel so loved by you if you could just see that. And so to me, like I said, there's often a lot of layers going on. Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, I'd encourage you to please like, subscribe, share, comment. That helps show it to more people. And then also submit your question at the email live@chastity.com, or submit your question or call in through our Discord server so we can talk to you in person on our next show.